Hi folks, this is the second video I'm doing on tinnitus. I actually did one prior to this and I'm going to take it down. Two prior to this. The first one I'm going to leave up. This is the second one. This one's kind of a little long and rambling. Obviously I'm not a professional videographer. You may have picked up on that. So I want to try to get this in a way that you can receive it. So this second piece, I just want to quickly tell you about my story, and that is I was in the military. I was a helicopter pilot, flying a relatively new aircraft at the time. Had a lot of training accidents. Had a number of friends get killed. At the time, I was doing a suicide hotline. I was helping out the families of friends who got killed. And I was just trying to take too much onto myself. And I had a sense of being out of control. And as we know, psychologically, you need that sense that you're always in control. I'm going to show you are in this. And I will also, as I'm going to lean on here as we go through here, through this whole piece, there's kind of a couple of bedrock pieces to pick up and how to cure tinnitus. And the one piece to know is there's an objective world. Things happen in the objective world. That's reality, as we call it. As it applies to you, it's 100% your perception that matters. 100%, nothing less. Okay, and we're going to talk about that, about how that interacts with tinnitus as we go through this. So I felt my world at that point was getting out of control. I had chronic stress. My chronic stress led to chronic anxiety. My chronic anxiety led to panic disorder, which is brutal. Maybe some of you have had that before, or I can do a series of videos on that too, and how to cure for that. Irrevocably, 100%, it's going to work for you. And by the way, what I'm going to tell you absolutely works for you. I know the fear brain jumps in. It's irrational. It'll say, no, it won't work for me. What if, what if, what if? By the way, as we know in anxiety, and hopefully you realize this, and maybe you do already, the second the sentence in your brain starts out with what if, when you start thinking, well, what if, throw it away. It's valueless. What if is part of your fear brain. It's not your intellectual brain. What if, little, men from space come down and do this, for your irrational limbic primordial brain, that's an eventuality that could happen. It's not rational. Little men are not coming down. That's just not happening. So what if statements, pitch them, they're valueless. But we'll go into that, how you can cure for all of these anxiety disorders permanently. Okay, we'll talk about the physiology here as we go on. But to finish my story, I got panic disorder. It was before the internet. This is 30 years ago. A woman who I read who self-diagnosed. Her name is Dr. Claire Weeks. Wonderful, love that lady. Can't wait to see her in heaven and thank her. She had anxiety disorder. She self-diagnosed and came up with a protocol to get through it. And I'll put it on the comment section of this video so you can see it. So I had gone through this stuff, had these anxiety issues, was able to get through it through various pieces to include Weeks' work. But I got a couple of years later, tinnitus came along, and it was during a particularly anxious time in my life. And I thought, that's interesting that these two things are happening at the same time. And I went to an otolaryngologist. He, did some hearing tests on me. I already knew I had a low-grade hearing loss from my time on the flight line. And listen what his comments were to me. He said, you've got tinnitus. You'll always have it. It's incurable. You just have to learn to live with it. And if you think of the way he said, he told me his wife had it, and he gave me some support groups. And if you can feel the timbre of the way I said that, the tone I said that, it sounded emotional, didn't it? It didn't say like, here you broke a bone, got to get it set, here's the protocol, let's move on. And it doesn't even make sense, knowing how plastic our brains are. If you read, watch the TED Talks, read some of the stuff in the popular press, unless you're a neurologist, of course, our brains are very plastic, and they're always adapting and always changing. We're always creating, as my wife says, neural pathways. So the fact that we kind of got into this situation doesn't make sense if you think about it logically, because if there's a mechanism to get out, there's a mechanism to get in, there's a mechanism to get out, and there absolutely is. So when I got this diagnosis from the otolaryngologist, it just sounded to me like, it's just too coincidental that I now have this ringing in my head or my ears, this tinnitus, at a time that I'm stressed. Those two have to be, it's too coincidental, the two have to be related, and they are. And that's when I stumbled on the work of Dr. Pawel Jastreboff. I'll put that down. Pawel, excuse me. Dr. Jastreboff was doing something called, I think, tinnitus retrainment treatment or something like that. And he writes for an academic audience. So it's a little hard to get through his stuff, but he was on, I think, now the right track, the only track. And that was seeing tinnitus as an emotive response, okay? So that was my story. I went back and kind of, just looked at myself and said, you know what, this is no more than a lion and a tiger and a bear and a spider, if you saw the video before. I put the sound of the tinnitus into that little repository, and now I've got to get it out. And that's why I'm hearing it so loud. That's why I have hyperacusis. My body is not malfunctioning. We talk about this. It's hyperfunctioning. The emotions keep us alive. They do a lot more than just kind of season our life and make it wonderful or sometimes distressing. But our emotions keep us alive. So I put this hearing thing in that arena. Again, it is not the hearing loss. It's not the loud noise. It's not the fact that you worked on the flight line or you work in whatever, anything to do with sound. Maybe you attended a lot of concerts. The initiating event, and this is true for all anxiety. You don't have to go back and solve your childhood crises. It's good to do that. That probably gave you the stress, obviously, but you don't have to do that to solve the limbic system. Your limbic system can't even reason that stuff out. It's just responding to, it's listening to you, telling it what it has to do. And this limbic response, the amygdala is part of this, is basically, let's think of it this way. If you go and step off a curb and you hear a car horn, if you have to cognitively process or intellectually process the fact that as you step off the curb, hey, there's a car horn, that probably could be associated with a car. I've just stepped into the street, cars driving the street, might be a good idea to step back. Too late, you already got hit. We hear a car horn, bam. We respond immediately to it. Immediately. Why? Because we have a process in our brain that's keeping us alive, and that's our limbic system. It goes right no gear, kicks in adrenaline, and there's that fight or flight or freeze mode, right? And hopefully with our car horn, we hear it, boom, we step back, and we're saved. This is what you've done. This is what I've done. This is what we've all done with the sound of tinnitus. Because think about it. Again, I talked about this. The tinnitus doesn't have to be annoying. You can think it's wonderful. You can. You have that choice. Talked about that. You have 100% control over your response to the world. 100%. Nobody can make you angry. You choose to be angry. Yeah, they can do stupid things that piss you off. Excuse the phrase. You choose to be angry. You can say, you know what? I'm not going to let that set me off. Nobody can make you anything. You choose it. It's important to know that. Why? Because you have 100% control over your universe all the time. Can't be different. Can't be, right? Nobody gets inside of yourself. Can't do it. Impossible. Can't happen. You're 100% control. Just like you're 100% control over your reaction to that noise. So how do you get away from this thing? Simple. Train yourself, just like getting rid of the fear of spiders or bridges or public speaking or whatever it is. Just train yourself over time not to fear it. Make it a friend. It's the same kind of thing. You may have been afraid of monsters as a kid. I was. And nighttime brings out fear. The fear brain's bigger in the nighttime. Why? It's primordial. When things got darker, our vision got limited, right? Which is our primary way of keeping ourselves alive, right? So nighttime brings on fears. That's why you ruminate over these things at night. You wake up, they're not quite as bad. I get lost in the nighttime piece. So we're going to retrain our system not to fear it a little at a time. We're going to make a friend. Oh, the nightmares. We're going to make a friend of this noise. Hey, bring it on. And this is consistent with Dr. Weeks's thought with panic disorder, where we're fearing the anxiety attack. It's just like this horrible, vicious cycle of fear and more adrenaline. And adrenaline is a powerful chemical, and that limbic system is a brainless guy. He wants to help you. He's like, I'm going to help you. You taught me to, worry about this noise. Anytime I hear it, man, boom, kicking up the hearing, dumping my little adrenaline in, we're ready to go. Fight, flight, what do you want to do with this thing? And we don't need it. We're going to retrain our motive brain, which again is not reasonable. Time to use our logical minds here. We're going to retrain it and say, you know what? That noise can't hurt me. It's just a little noise. We don't have to pump up the volume to, maximum, decibels on this when it comes. We're going to retrain ourselves just like the monsters I had as a kid. I made friends of them. So all these, the Wolfman and Frankenstein and all that, whatever, Dracula, I made friends of them in my mind, obviously. And I no longer feared them. And I took that fear piece out, just like we talked about the spiders. When you realize they were not these, agents of doom, they're these little, guys running around trying to just eke out a little living here on the planet in their spidery form. We do that a little at a time, right? Accommodation a little at a time. And once we get that noise out of our fear system, or out of that emotive response, out of the limbic system, our limbic system says, okay, dude, I'm not going to turn the adrenaline on next time I hear that noise. I don't fear it anymore. You told me not to fear it. You retrain me. And once you don't fear it, you won't fear it anymore. It's the house on the side of the road. You see it, you've never seen it before. You drive past it, you see that house. You'll never not see it again. Why? Because you're aware of it. Well, why can't you just lapse back into tinnitus? And during stressful times, you may hear the noise get a little louder, right? But you're not going to fear it. You just won't, because you know not to. Your limbic system's like, dude, I'm not bringing out the adrenaline. It's not a threat. You've trained me. You trained me that it was a threat. Now you train me that it's not a threat. Okay, so we'll do one more video here. I'll knock this off at this point, and then we'll get into how we can kind of do that, and maybe a little more on the physiology of how it happens. Okay, thanks so much.